there's another story here that I want to look at. It's in the Hill, and it says zero-calorie sweetener popular in keto diets is linked to strokes and heart attacks. Now, this scares the crap out of me because, as you guys know, I wasn't always this handsome, this slim, this svelte, this slender, right? I'm OG, original gordito. And I was 270 pounds, 269 to be exact, and went on this keto diet and got down to 199 pounds. And I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. But then my cholesterol went up. So now I'm battling cholesterol, but I'm a little bit slimmer. And I read this and I think, oh my gosh, how could I have done it without, sucralose and all these other things that help you to tolerate things? And I said, man, we need to get with one of our experts on this stuff. And that we have, right? So we're going to talk with Dr. Fahmi Farah. She's a board-certified invasive cardiologist based out of Texas, and she's our guest. Doctor, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I want to get to this really from my own point of personal privilege and my own fear. How much danger am I in that I have a Splenda with my coffee every day?
According to the study, it's not a good idea to do that. We've noted in the medical community for quite some time that these artificial sweeteners were not the best for our health, but now we actually have a nice study that's showing that it significantly increases your risk of cardiovascular disease, especially stroke and heart attack. I would probably advise against that.
Now, specifically with the cardiovascular stuff, because I remember hearing years ago that aspartame or the other one, I forget what it's called, saccharin, there were lots of negative reviews on that, but that this new one, the one in the yellow packet, was supposed to be magical, and then the one in the green packet, now I'm reading this and it says everything's just as bad, and that this can have an effect on your blood vessels. Tell us about that.
It can, yes. The main thing it does is there's something called platelets. It's one of the blood components, and it's responsible for clotting, blood clotting. And what this, the component of the artificial sweetener we're talking about here is erythritol, and that increases that clotting of platelets. And so your blood becomes thicker, and it's just more, it's more prone to becoming clotted, and that can go to the brain and cause a stroke, and also increases your risk of having a heart attack.
So with respect to the artificial sweeteners, is this every artificial sweetener that contains this, I forget what it's called here, this whatever tol, or is it just some of them? Yeah.
Majority of them do. And you brought up an interesting point, like some of the earlier ones, like saccharin and stuff. We knew that those were pretty bad as well. It's a pretty complicated process. It actually impacts your weight gain as well. Like you mentioned with keto diet, a lot of people are losing weight. That's true. Most people with keto diet, they are successful with losing weight, but it does something to your metabolism. It changes things to where your cholesterol goes up. And so specifically the bad cholesterol, LDL, is what we're talking about. And so it really does a number of damage to the cardiovascular system, starting from increasing your clotting factor to the cascade of inflammation. It actually increases inflammation in the vascular system as well. So over time, it actually degrades the integrity of your blood vessels in a number of different ways.
And obviously, when you have bad blood vessels, this leads to a number of things, because that's like the end result of diabetes, right? Is bad blood vessels, cardiovascular disease, people go blind, they lose their limbs. What else can happen?
That's correct. Diabetes is a very good example. One of the things is interesting is that majority of the people who most commonly use these artificial sweeteners are actually our diabetic patients, because they're trying to avoid sugar. And if you looked at the study, the interesting thing is that those are the people who are actually at highest risk of sustaining damage and the complications related to erythritol, that's an artificial sweetener. Their risk of having heart attack in general is higher than the regular population, but when it comes specifically to using the artificial sweeteners, their risk is slightly higher than the general public.
So what is it that you as as a cardiologist, recommend to your patients or to people that are listening to sweeten whatever it is that they want to sweeten? Should they go back to regular sugar? Should they stick with what got them into the problem, which for many people is high fructose corn syrup, right? That was killing everybody, and they said, stop using it. What's the next sweetener that's healthy?
To be honest with you, I do think that going back to the original, like the healthiest sugar, which is original sugar, is the way to go. And moderation is key, for our diabetic patients. There's really no easy way out there for them, unfortunately. I'm not advising that they take sugar because obviously that's not
right.
a good idea. But taking these artificial sweeteners is not going to replace the problem. It's only going to add to it.
Yeah, it seems it makes it worse with respect to cardiovascular disease and the weakening of blood vessels. So regular sugar or no sugar, I guess, live a sugar-free lifestyle without the fake stuff. And people who, like me, right after this, I'm like, okay, that's it. No more Splenda for me. No more, sucralose. None of that stuff. But what if somebody's been doing this for a really long time and they may have had some sort of vascular damage? What do you recommend? What do they do?
Anyone who has risk factors, especially those who have diabetes, I would recommend that they get a checkup, a cardiovascular checkup with a cardiologist. Just some regular routine screening would give us a very good idea as to what their present cardiovascular health is. So that would be advisable.
Is there like a specific test they ask for, or they just show up and say, hey, I want to make sure my cardiovascular system works?
Yes. When it comes specifically to cardiovascular health, there are certain really basic tests that we can use, such as an EKG. Just a basic EKG can give us a very good idea in terms of if there's any kind of early disease process that we can detect. There's also an echocardiogram, that's an ultrasound of the heart. With that, we can check the overall heart function and, of course, a stress test as well for those who have risk factors or symptoms like chest pain, shortness of breath. A lot of times people won't have chest pain. They might just get fatigue, are just not able to carry on with their daily activities like they used to. Those are all signs that there could be something going on in your heart.
All right. Well, that sounds fair to me. I want to pick your brain on a couple of other things because there's another headline that stuck out to me here. Pregnancy and childbirth, shockingly dangerous experience, killing a woman every 2 minutes. And our guest is Dr. Fahmi Farah. She's a certified invasive cardiologist out of Texas, and she's the founder of Global Health Alliance Foundation. And one of the things that is on her radar and is on mine now after I read this headline is that pregnancy or childbirth is a shockingly dangerous experience that kills a woman every 2 minutes. And she's going to explain why. Doc, what's going on here?
Yes, it's a very, very sad topic to discuss, Rick. It's in the United States, the leading cause of death for pregnant women is actually cardiovascular disease, believe it or not.
Is this linked to sweeteners?
It could be. I guess there needs to be a study on that. But overall, it seems to be hypertension. High blood pressure is probably one of the key factors here. But 50%, actually less than 50% of women entering pregnancy have good heart health. And the statistics are showing it now because we're losing, as you mentioned, so many women every minute. And 1/3 of maternal deaths is due to cardiovascular disease here in the United States.
That's crazy. So this is one of those things that, I had no idea. What's the solution to something like this? Is this because this is high blood pressure that's related to the pregnancy, or women that already have high blood pressure and then become pregnant?
It's a little bit of both. There are women who have high blood pressure before they get pregnant, and they're, of course, at much higher risk of going into something called preeclampsia or eclampsia, and that can complicate pregnancy by a lot, and their mortality rate increases significantly. And even those who do not have any pre-existing high blood pressure or any cardiovascular issues, even they can run into cardiovascular problems during pregnancy. That's why pregnancy is called nature's stress test. There's a very specific thing I do want to raise awareness about, and it has become an issue here in the United States. It's increasing in incidence. The condition is called peripartum cardiomyopathy. It is a very unique condition to women who are pregnant. It's a type of heart failure that happens during third trimester of pregnancy, and it can even occur after pregnancy, up to 6 months postpartum. So, heart failure is a very serious condition, of course, and if that's not detected on time and not treated on time, the prognosis can be very poor. It could actually lead to death in many women. I have a personal link to this. I actually lost one of my cousins to this condition at the age of 29,
My condolences.
1 week after giving birth. So it's a very, very scary condition. Prognosis can be very good if it is treated on time. So it really comes down to awareness, being able to catch it on time.
Is this very prevalent, what you're describing?
It used to be rare in the United States. It was more prevalent in the Southeast Asia, some of the South American and African countries, but it has become a lot more prevalent here in the United States.
Wow. And just interesting note here. I'm looking at the piece in Fortune that it says complications from unsafe abortions and underlying medical conditions can be aggravated by pregnancy, like HIV, AIDS, and malaria are the top causes of maternal death, according to this report. Is it isolated to that, or is this leading into these other issues that you're talking about, or is this just across the board?
So if you look at it, the data from worldwide, the conditions you just mentioned, those are the leading cause of maternal death around the world, usually complications related to, abortions or infections. Infection is a major cause, but specifically in the United States, it is cardiovascular disease.
Wow. So it seems like uniquely, whether it's pregnancy or what we talked about in the last segment, cardiovascular disease is like very prevalent in the United States.
It is. Pregnancy, or even outside of pregnancy, it is the leading cause of death overall for men and women. And now we're seeing even young folks, usually people who are in their pregnancy age are considered to be in their youth, their younger age, when you don't really think of people getting heart disease, but now we're seeing otherwise. And I will mention another study that came out recently, actually. It's a post-COVID study that showed that the risk, the rate of heart attack is actually increased by a lot, 25 to 30% higher incidence of heart attack in the age group between 25 to 44-year-old. This is an age group that was largely ignored in the past in the sense that they're considered low risk, so they weren't really considered high risk at all. But now the COVID has changed that picture to some degree.
Now, is this a result of the COVID infection per se, or is it a complication of vaccines or a combination thereof?
It's probably multifactorial. The studies did focus on the last 3 years, the pandemic period, and they are saying it is largely a result of the virus itself. But I do believe that there are other confounding factors. For example, lifestyle changed. In the course of the last 3 years during the pandemic, people were not able to exercise as well. Healthy eating kind of took a hit for many. Stress factor went up. Sleep, a lot of people have sleep disturbance from the stress. So I do think that it's more than one factor that's contributing to that number.
Got it. And in the minutes remaining, I mean, just overall, being that, I never go to the cardiologist. How often should I go? Is that something I should do every year, like my annual? Because I just had a physical, and they did an EKG and all that, and they just said, hey, lose more weight. But they didn't tell me I had to see any other doctors. Is that a typical thing that people should be doing?
I would have to say yes, especially those who have risk factors like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, stressful jobs, sleep disorders, and those who have family history. Genetic, it does play a big role. So with the recent studies coming out, age is no longer a factor, it seems. So I do think that earlier you get a checkup, the better it is, because 80% of heart disease is preventable. So prevention is key.
All right. And with respect to stevia, I guess stevia falls into this as well, even though it's natural in terms of the sweeteners. And monk fruit, or is monk fruit safe and stevia not?
Actually, they all fall under the same thing, yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, more or less. Any artificial sweetener, those would be considered, like in this study, actually, monk fruit was mentioned as well.
Oh, wow. So I guess unless you're eating the actual fruit, if it's some sort of powdered, dried up version, that's where it gets that other property that makes it unhealthy.
Right.
Fascinating. Well, Doc, I want to thank you for the information. I learned a bunch of things today, and I can't believe how serious cardiovascular disease is in our country. Last question. Do you think it's because we're fat? Like overall, around the world, people say Americans are fat. Is it because we're fat?
Bluntly speaking, your lifestyle plays a huge role, probably the biggest when it comes to diet and exercise. We can change a lot by focusing on just those two things.
All right. Well, we don't want to put you out of business, but you're saying if everybody loses weight and eats a little bit better, we'll all be in better shape.
Much better shape, yes.
Outstanding. All right, everybody, that's Dr. Fahmi Farah. She's with BentleyHealth.com, and she's the founder of the Global Health Alliance Foundation. She's a certified invasive cardiologist, and she's out of Texas. Check her out. Follow her on Twitter and the Gram, at Fahmi J. Farah. And, Doc, I want to thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
You're welcome.